Hello YouTube. I received some questions about the AV7000 here, so I decided to give more of a full review of the good points and bad points of this particular unit. Some people tell you it's the greatest Supergun you can buy, and while it is a very, very nice unit, it does have a few negatives. So, here's the truth. Now, I've been collecting a lot more boards recently, and I'm doing a lot more testing with it. And, well, you can probably already notice that now there's wires sticking out of it, and I'll get to that in a minute. Anyway, good point. The controller, the 9000 TV, is great stick. I love it. Best I've ever used. And the gun itself is nice and made, very solid. The power supply is especially very nice, as well, back here there is a screw so you can adjust the 5-volt line, since some boards are a bit picky on the strength of the 5 volts. It also, of course, does have the negative 5 volts, which a lot of older boards need for sound, and a lot of modern Superguns don't even bother to use, because only the really older boards use them, but this does have this. Now, and also the power supply does have a switch on it, so you can switch it to 220 for you Europeans out there. But, so overall, it is a very functioning, very capable unit, especially if you can use the RGB. I can, but since for this review, since most people that do want one of these do not have the capabilities to use pure RGB, when they'd want to use the S-Video, or, well, this does have composite, but I would never recommend composite. So for them, well, this is stuff we need to talk about. First of all, though, the first negative with this system is that the Supergun itself does not have test nor service buttons on it. Now, to be honest, the service button really isn't all that useful. All it does is add a credit without actually inserting a coin. But of course, if you're doing this at home, it doesn't really matter. And also, it doesn't have a test button. Now, the majority of arcade boards either have a test switch or test button to enter test mode anyway, so you don't actually need one. But this gun does not have one on it. So, on mine, they're actually on the harness. You can see here, here's the test and the services on the other side, which, directly wired to the harness like this, it works, but it's kind of flimsy and could break off if I'm not careful with it. But still, you could make your own wires if you customize it. It's just the harness I have. So that's one negative. Now, another negative, well, so anyway, I started collecting boards, and everything was going great. They all looked beautiful, especially in RGB, but even just with the S-Video, they looked great, because, well, I have two TVs, one of which is RGB capable. The problem is that it's a 29-incher CRT, weighs over 100 pounds. I cannot rotate it for vertical games without killing myself. It's too heavy. So I have a smaller 19-inch TV that I can rotate, but the best I can do on that is component or S-Video. So, things were going great, and then I got my BreezaSoft crystal system with Crystal of King's Cart, which I made a video of earlier, and it's a great little board. I'm actually very surprised by how small it is. I mean, look, my hand is pretty much bigger than the entire board. I mean, most people think of the Neo Geo when they think of BreezaSoft, but the cartridge itself is probably half the size of an MVS cart. Anyway, I got this board and hooked it up to both the RGB and the S-Video, and I had a problem. Well, take a look at the screen here. Now, it's hard to do with this camera, but the screen is just incredibly bright. The colors are very strong and washed out. That is because this board just outputs very, very strong colors. Now, if you have a proper monitor, you can adjust the colors pretty easily, but on a CRT, you're kind of limited. Even if you can go in the TV serviceman mode, of course, and mess around with that. But if you're not careful, you can totally ruin the TV. So I wouldn't recommend that. Now, this is common for a lot of boards. Some boards have incredibly strong outputs. So how people get around this is simply by putting resistors on the red, green, and blue lines so that you can adjust the colors manually and tone them down. Now, unfortunately, the AV7000 does not have this ability. It doesn't have any pots, and it's got a brightness knob, but it just affects overall brightness. You can't really adjust the colors. I even opened it up and looked inside, and there's nothing, no way to manually adjust the colors outside of the box. You could easily, just put some in pots yourself onto the RGB lines, but then you'd actually have to drill some holes into the sheet metal case so you could actually adjust them. Needless to say, this is a pretty big negative, and I was disappointed when I realized this. So, what I did, out of curiosity, was I hooked up a J-Roc component encoder. Now, the nice thing about this encoder is that it does have, in fact, 3 little pots to adjust the red, green, and blue strength individually. So as you can see right now, this is just hooked up straight into the RGB line, so that it's coming out. And so currently I'm on, the Sigma's S-Video here. I'm not going to show you the true RGB just because most people can't use it anyway. And if I switch over to the component now, coming through the J-Roc, much, much better. Thanks to the adjustments made on it, it actually looks like a game now. It's not all bright and washed out, and it's actually playable and looks really, really nice. So that pretty much fixed my problem, and it's unfortunate that I basically had to add an additional encoder to the very expensive AV7000. Unfortunate, but by using a combination of the two, I can get pretty much perfect. Because I will say, on my other boards, in general, the Sigma outputs a better colors, better picture in both RGB, S-Video, and composite. In general, the AV7000 wins over the J-Roc. However, since you cannot adjust the colors manually with this thing, if you get a board like this where the colors are way too strong, well, you pretty much need a J-Roc, or, you could put resistors right on your harness lines if you really wanted to, but if you're more of the lazy, convenient person like myself, the J-Roc works well. I do not have any bits. I wish I did so I could do a real good comparison, but compared to the two, well, overall, when the Sigma works, which it has for, all of my boards, except for this one, it's better than the J-Roc. But the J-Roc definitely gets that compatibility bonus because of those pots that the Sigma doesn't have. So, in conclusion, I really do like the AV7000. It's a great supergun. I'm glad I have it. It is not the perfect world's greatest supergun that people will tell you it is. It is definitely a very fine product, easy to use, and as I said, all of my boards have been beautiful, except for, the crystal system here. So that's really about it. I just thought I'd give you a look and just let you know, and I hope you enjoyed it. See you next time.